Hello. Hi. Have you ever wondered how many bridges there are right across the UK? How many of those vital constructions we depend upon to bind together our towns and our cities and our villages? How many of them spanning waterways and valleys, coastal inlets and canals, high-rise blocks, supermarket malls, train lines, road intersections, ensuring the smooth flow of traffic, cars, lorries, buses, access for pedestrians and cyclists, paving the way for all of our daily interactions between our communities, between our commerces. So many of these bridges, so many ingenious devices. I confess I spent a bit of time online looking up some of these. I got a bit geeky about it. So you can have a simple span across beams and girders. You can have a suspension bridge hung from eye-bars, metal ropes, complex crescents of integrated superstructures and substructures to which we give no thought at all as we cross across them. Orthotropic beams resist stress in multiple directions. Oh, for some orthotropic beams. It is extraordinary what you can find. Cantilevered arches resist the load. They spread it in different directions. Covered bridges, I love this one. Covered bridges are constructed from a series of diagonal webs called a truss, which are calculated to complex mathematical calculations. You get bonus points, because there's so many of these, if you can spot the different kinds. My favourite is a double intersection Pratt. Or a triple Whipple. New, old, ancient, modern, we use them all the time, so much so that we forget their fundamental function. Imagine if overnight a whole load of them disappeared. Let's say 2/3. Imagine waking up tomorrow and finding yourself cut off from your neighbours, your communities, your friends, your workplace. Imagine the chaos and the isolation of your life. Now imagine central government's response was, what do you want us to do about it? You chose to live where you do. We're not going to pay for your lifestyle decisions. I think some of you can see where I'm going with this, right? We would never dream of talking about physical infrastructure in that way. We talk about social infrastructure like that all the time. The silent underpinning done by millions and millions of carers that allows our economy to function. Undervalued, underpaid, dismissed. And dismissed why? Because this is primarily the work of women. Mothers, grandmothers, daughters, aunties, nieces, wives. The army of people who step in and do the vast majority of the hard work of raising children, of caring for people with disabilities, of looking after elderly relatives, tending to people who are ill, providing end-of-life love and support. It is estimated that the economic value of unpaid care provided by women every year alone in the UK is £77 billion. £77 billion. All those women waking up every day having to build their own bridges, underpin their own support structures, travel precariously along paths that only they and other women see, and remake time after time after time. And so our productivity lags all our other G7 nations. Our economy is frayed. Our society is frayed because half of our population is invisible. And why? Because every year at budget time, the Chancellor, from whichever party, though it's always a man, stands up and says, I've got a brilliant idea to get the economy going. We're going to invest billions in infrastructure. Finance ministers from all political colours will talk about their industrial strategies because these are men's jobs. building those bridges, the real physical ones. Roads, house building, factories, technologies. Britain is going to spend £23 billion in innovation and infrastructure over the next 5 years. Women's jobs, expenses to be cut. Sure Start, healthcare, social care. The UK has got the most expensive childcare in the world. Spending on social care for disabled and older people has fallen by 11% in like-for-like terms, and the number of people receiving state-funded support has fallen by 25% at least. Do you know what the state calls a woman who, in those circumstances now, stays at home to look after her children and maybe also her elderly mother? You know what the Treasury's term for that person is? Economically inactive. This is not only unjust, it is not only unfair, it is very, very stupid. Because care is a vital, vital construction that can transform our economy. And furthermore, it has been proven that investment in care brings twice the employment and twice the economic benefits as investment in construction. The Women's Budget Group worked out that if you invest 2% of GDP into construction, you get 750,000 jobs. If you invest 2% of GDP into care, you get 1.5 million jobs. And those 1.5 million jobs bring with them £40 billion in higher tax revenues and reduced benefits. It's a no-brainer, right? You would think so, right? Care is the bridge that takes the strain from our society. It brings us together, and it is a fundamental investment if we are all to finally flourish and if women are to be equal. Because a government that cares about business cares about childcare. A government that cares about closing the gender pay gap cares about shared parenting. A government that cares about families understands that unaffordable services are leaving them behind. Have you ever had a conversation about childcare with a woman who is not from the UK? I have. I have had a conversation with a woman from Iceland. Whoa! That was like talking to someone from a different planet. And she said to me that before she came to the UK, she'd never even had to think about choosing between work and children. When she talked about the investment in childcare, the investment in shared parenting, she wasn't talking about the theory of it, she was talking about the practice of it, and how in practice it revolutionises workplaces. It changes the visibility of fathers at work. It changes the visibility of mothers at work. It changes everything for all women because you are not seen as a potential liability, because you live in a society where everybody has a stake in care and everybody cares about it. And listening to her, I realised how far we have to go. I thought about what my life would be like if I'd never had to worry about childcare. If I'd never had to worry about paying for childcare, meeting the cost of childcare. If my husband had been able to share in those precious, gorgeous baby days. If I didn't have to worry every single day about maintaining the specialist support and care that my older daughter who has autism depends upon. And listening to my friend from Iceland, I felt knackered. I felt exhausted. I felt the exhaustion that so many women feel from getting up every day and building bridges between themselves and the people they love and the rest of the world with no support. It doesn't have to be this way. Women have been discriminated against for all of the history of our country. Denied the right to vote, denied an education, denied the right to own property until 1920. Now, those laws are passed, but that history is still with us. Women are still the poorest people in the country. 2/3 of this country's poorest people are women. Women are still the single biggest underrepresented group in this country. Women work hard all their lives, and for what? An austerity policy that doesn't see them, that taxes them disproportionately. A hike in their retirement age that takes no account of the years and years of unpaid care work that they had to do. We can change this. Next year marks the centenary that women got the right to vote. That first tranche of women, small group, over the age of 30, white, property owners. We do not have to take the inequalities of the past into our future. We can bridge that gap if we start to rethink the kind of bridges that we want to build. Thank you very much.